Good morning, everyone. As you can see here, I'm doing something a little bit different. I was told by my wonderful wife that I can actually put a little video of me in the PowerPoint. So this way you can actually see me as a little more interaction. So I think I like this, and it might be a little bit better. I think it's easier on me also that I can actually see myself. All right, today, so I have my coffee, I'm ready to go. Put that down here so I can do some teaching. We're going to continue with chapter 10 today, the Cold War, and we're going to talk about part 2, the Berlin airlifting, the events that lead up to the Berlin airlift, like the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan. It's going to make the Soviets very angry. As you know, Berlin was a divided city, as we talked about in the last section, so these are the events that will lead up to it. All right, so let's get started. All right, we're going to start with the Truman Doctrine. Now, after World War II, there are only two major powers in the world. We first have the United States, along with our allies like Great Britain, France, West Germany, Italy. Those are known as the West. Okay, I'm pointing that way as if I was in my classroom pointing to the West. I'm in my kitchen, but that's the West here. The other side is the Soviet Union. They're known as the East. Okay, I'm pointing toward the East. All right, may not be the directions in your house, but this is the directions in my kitchen. The Soviet Union, or the East, the Soviet Union is also known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, which is also the, the initials USSR. Those are the English words. So in Russian, they have different words in the Cyrillic alphabet. I don't know how to pronounce them. You'd have to ask Ms. Sarova. But they're known as the CCCP. This is on everything from their missiles to their hockey jerseys. All right, so the conflict in the Cold War is between the East and the West. And this conflict goes up to, I'm in college and we're still talking about the East and the West. Even sometimes you hear it referenced today, especially in older movies. Oh, yes. The East, the bad people, the communists, the West, the good guys, the Americans. So this is the conflict we see during the Cold War. All right, 1946, Greece. Greece, as we know, is a country that goes back thousands of years. Socrates, Athens, Sparta, you've all heard about them in freshman year. All right, now, during World War II, Greece, which is a democracy, was attacked and taken over by the German forces. All right, and during World War II, they were, controlled by the Nazis. During the war, a lot of these communist forces in Greece fought back against them, as they were doing in Yugoslavia and they were doing in Albania. So when the war ends and Greece is freed from German control, the nationalist government, this was the government that was before there, wants to come back and take over again. But the communists want to keep in power. So a civil war is going to break out between the two powers. This is considered the first conflict of the Cold War. Now, with the help of the United States and Great Britain, the nationalist government will win. The communists did have their own backing. Tito in Yugoslavia, along with the communists in Bulgaria and Albania, helped the communist powers forces in Greece. The one person who didn't support it was, strangely enough, was Stalin. Stalin was opposed to this Greek uprising, and this is going to start the rift between Stalin and Tito. All right, so the two of them, they don't get along at all. All right, and Stalin will constantly, as I mentioned earlier in the last 2 days ago, Stalin actually tries to get Tito out, but Tito is he manages to hold on. He's very powerful within Yugoslavia. Now, the Greek Civil War does last 3 years, and it'll cause the deaths of 158,000 Greek civilians and soldiers. Now, the Soviets were also demanding military bases in Turkey. Turkey is just south of the Soviet Union, and they want to do this as far as their protection. Now, Turkey was neutral during the war, but joined the Allies right toward the end. Turkey was supported by the Allies and did not come under the control of Stalin or the communists. So Turkey stays a member of the Allies throughout the Cold War. They will be, our border, our closest border with the Soviet Union, though very little of the border of Turkey, since there's a big body of water, the Black Sea, between Turkey and the Soviet Union. So there's not too many borders actually between them. There is one over in the eastern part of Turkey where it borders with, Georgia and Armenia, which were then part of the Soviet Union. But Turkey does stay free of Stalin and the communists. It never joins them. Either does Greece. The two of them do not get along with each other, Turkey and Greece, but they both stay free of communism. Now, the fear of communism spreading throughout the world leads to the Truman Doctrine. A doctrine basically is a policy that the United States is going to follow in our relationship with the Soviet Union and communism. So that's what it is. The doctrine means a policy. Now, it was stated in 1947 by President Truman that communism must not be allowed to spread to the rest of the free world. All right, it is where it is. Soviet Union is communist. We have the satellite countries, Poland, East Germany, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania, Bulgaria. All right, so we have those countries. They're part of the communist, world. Yugoslavia and Albania have communist governments, but they're not really connected to Stalin. But that's where it is, and that's where it must stay. All right, it can't be allowed to spread to Turkey. It can't be allowed to spread to Greece. So the doctrine is going to make sure that those countries stay free of communism, and in effect, it does work because those countries stay free and have democratic governments throughout the entire Cold War. Now, this is a policy is known as containment. All right, we're going to contain the Soviet Union in one part of the world and not let it spread. All right, don't let communism spread to the rest of the free world. Now, importance. The Truman Doctrine would stop the spread of communism. All right, there's no doubt about it. All right, no other countries in Europe become communist. However, it does bring America into small wars against communist-backed countries. All right, we call these proxy wars. We don't really fight the Soviet Union. We fight other countries, or they fight other countries that we support or they support. So the Cold War never has a direct military confrontation between the Soviet Union and the United States. All right, but this is actually considered the start of the Cold War. It's called the Cold War because it never really gets hot. All right, you understand? Hot war means bombs and planes and guns and tanks. The Cold War means there's a lot of tension, between the two governments, a lot of back and forth, espionage, we'll all talk about that. A lot of problems going on, but it never ever escalates into a major war. And as we're going to talk about at the end of this section, that's a good thing when both powers become heavy with nuclear weapons. All right, now, one of the things that will go on through the entire Cold War is this war of espionage, all right? Spies spying on each other. We always see movies with, James Bond spying on the Soviet Union and Soviet spies spying on us. So the US and the Soviet Union would spy on each other throughout the entire Cold War, all right? Now, this starts during World War II. The United States creates, FDR approves it, the Office of Strategic Services, known as the OSS. It was a wartime intelligence agency that coordinates espionage activities behind enemy lines against the Germans, the Nazis. We would drop spies in by parachute, at nighttime, and they would spy on the Germans, try to radio out information, maybe destroy something, a railroad bridge, cut down communication lines. It was very dangerous because, of course, if they were captured, they would be tortured by the Gestapo and then ultimately be executed. And this happened. It wasn't just men, but the OSS employed women behind the lines, figuring they might be less conspicuous to the Nazis, and many of them were caught and were killed. So this had been going on. Now, when the war ends, of course, this was actually based on the British Foreign Intelligence Service, known as MI6. MI6 is mostly famous today because it's always involved in James Bond movies. Now, after the war, the OSS is closed down because, we've won. We don't have to drop spies behind the enemy lines anymore. But a new agency begins. Now, we've all probably heard of this, the Central Intelligence Agency, known as the CIA. is created in 1947. It's a civilian foreign intelligence service. They're not members of the military. It is a civilian thing, but they are members of the United States government. All right? The purpose of the CIA is to gather, process, and analyze national security information from around the world. Anything that would affect the United States internationally, the CIA will look into it, analyze it, and see, and then try to assess what should be done about it. The principal opponent is the Soviet spy agency known as the KGB. The KGB also is a lot, seen in James Bond movies and other spy movies. The KGB and the CIA are the principal opponents to each other. Now, later, the CIA will start carrying out covert actions. Covert means totally undercover, no one knows about it. So they're going to carry out covert actions against the USSR and their supporters. Anytime the United States perceives the Soviet Union is trying to take over a foreign government, the CIA will step in to try to stop them. This is part of the Cold War, part of the back and forth spying that goes on between each other. They were authorized to carry out covert actions against what we call hostile foreign states or groups that could, if needed, be denied by the U.S. government. So the CIA could do something. If people are caught trying to do this, the United States government said, oh, well, we don't know anything about it. We have nothing to do with it. So there is that ability there to, so secret that even in the CIA building, CIA agents that have died in the line of duty, there's a star put there, but they don't put their names there because they have to keep their identity secret. Because even though they might be dead, there might be other spies that they worked with, and the CIA's got to be very, very secretive. Now, the Marshall Plan. We're going to talk about the Marshall Plan now. After World War II, you saw when we talked about the bombing of Europe by the Americans and the British, carpet bombing. Berlin, 90% of the city was destroyed, bridges, tunnels, dams. In France, in Amsterdam, in Belgium, Italy, there's a lot of devastation, all right? Most cities had been destroyed, and even in Warsaw was one of the most destroyed cities in Poland. So we see a lot of devastation. So 21 million Europeans were homeless when World War II ended. 21 million. There we see a picture of Berlin. This is the Brandenburg Gate. I had a picture up on the wall. Today, of course, it's all cleaned up, but this was right after the war. You see rubble everywhere. You see bullet holes, shell holes. Here we see another picture of a German street. It's over here by a river. The bridge has been pretty much devastating. I mean, look at the buildings. Nobody can be living in these buildings. So you can see all this devastation around Germany would have to be repaired. If this was one of the cathedrals. This was known as the Kaiser Wilhelm Cathedral. It was heavily damaged during the war. The center tower there, I can't really point to it, but it's, let's see here. I can't, let's see if I can do this. There, you see it up there? Okay. That center tower there is still there today. The Germans tore down the rest of the church, but they kept those center towers, the front of the church, and they look exactly like they look today. And it's kept that way as a memorial to those who died in Berlin during the bombing raid. So it is a memorial. They've done that in a number of cities throughout Europe, kept a building that was mostly destroyed. In London, too. I remember being in a church that was destroyed during the Blitz, and there was only 3 walls left. They didn't tear it down. They kept it exactly the way it was. They planted a garden in where the church used to be, and it's a memorial there today. So the Germans did keep that church there as a memorial. Here you see the civilians. They would be like carrying out bricks, and so much rubble actually was pulled out of Germany from the devastation and piled up. They actually created these hillsides outside Berlin that were not there originally. It's where they dumped all the rubble. They dumped dirt on top of that. They've grass has grown on it, and people today go and have picnics and hang out on the hillside. And it was actually just created from all the rubble from the destroyed buildings in Berlin. Here we see entering the British section. You see here's grandma there pulling stones out. It was so much devastation. This is the city of Cologne. Bridges were destroyed. This is the Rhine River. This is a railroad bridge. Now they rebuilt it today. trains go across it. But in 1945-46, this bridge would actually have to be pulled out of the river, and rebuilt. So there was a lot of devastation here. Here are some people that are trying to actually escape from the communists. They're gathering up their suitcases and they're crossing a railroad bridge that had been bombed during the war. The bridge didn't totally collapse, but you can see no trains could cross it. But so the people are actually, you can see the way they get, it's tipped to the side and the way they're trying to get across there. So what are we going to do with these, all the devastation? The United States has to step in and do something to try to repair all the damage. Because, as the point here, we don't want to repeat the mistakes of World War I. We don't want to be so harsh against the Germans that another Hitler comes out, all right? So the United States creates a major plan to rebuild Europe, all right? We see buildings here. It was called the Marshall Plan. It was put together by Secretary of State Marshall. It was for the European recovery. You can see the signs up there. This is in Berlin. There's like a little bear. That's the symbol of Berlin, where they're rebuilding buildings, that had been destroyed in the war. All right. The Marshall Plan would rebuild the highways that were heavily bombed during the war. This was the symbol of the Marshall Plan, showing Uncle Sam, excuse me, Uncle Sam over in Germany shoveling and building it. You see the little box there with the recovery logo on it. And it was America going to rebuild Europe. All right. It's going to cost a lot of money. But as you can imagine, we're going to make a lot of friends. All right. People are going to be very happy that after the United States did all this destruction, we're going to repair and rebuild Germany, and they're going to be very happy with us, and we're going to make friends. All right. Now, it's called the Marshall Plan after the U.S. Secretary of State George C. Marshall. George C. Marshall was a general. He was the chief of staff during World War II. He was FDR's #1 military aide. But after the war is over, he has been appointed by Truman to be the Secretary of State. And he's the one who puts this whole plan together. It was opposed very heavily by Republicans in Congress who wanted to go back to that isolationist thing. But the United States realized we can never become isolationist again. Those periods before World War II are over, all right? We have to now take a major step in controlling what goes on in Europe, because what goes on in Europe, as we saw in the war with planes and then later missiles, we can't hide behind oceans anymore, all right? So eventually Congress will approve $12.6 billion in aid. That's billion with a B, $1 billion in aid, all right? Now, 17 countries will join the plan, West Germany, France, Britain. Everyone's going to want to get help. The Netherlands, Belgium, everyone who has some damage, except the Soviet Union. We actually offered to help the Soviet Union rebuild Moscow, rebuild Stalingrad, rebuild Warsaw in Poland. But Stalin says, no, no, thank you. So the satellite countries, and Poland could really have used it. So could East Germany, because East Germany was just as devastated. The city of Dresden, which was bombed heavily at the end of the war, was pretty much leveled and would stay almost leveled through the next 30 years. They did build stuff. There was still rubble in Dresden in 1990 from World War II, because the Soviet Union and Stalin said, no, 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 we don't need your help. All right, so the Marshall Plan is going to support American interest in Britain, France, Netherlands, Belgium, Italy, countries that were damaged by the war. Because of this, George C. Marshall will receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Okay, so moving on, just waiting here, Mike. We want to keep, one of the reasons for the Marshall Plan is by rebuilding Europe, we're going to keep communism from spreading into these war-torn countries. Because as Marshall and Truman said, if we don't step in to help them, the Soviets could step in and help them. The Soviets could say, well, we'll help West Germany, and then pull West Germany into East Germany. We could help Belgium, or we could help the Netherlands, and maybe pull in there. So by us doing it, we're going to create strong democracies, and we're going to create allies and friends. And these friends are going to be with us throughout the entire Cold War. Also, there's got to be a financial thing in here. There'll be new markets for American goods. West Germans and French and Belgians and Dutch. There'll be new markets for America. They could buy Fords. They could buy Coca-Cola. This is great for American businesses. So we're going to get something out of it too. So it's not, people say, well, we're giving all this money away, but we're going to make a lot of it back with sales of our businesses to these countries. So the Marshall Plan is a major success. They even issued a stamp commemorating it. There's George C. Marshall commemorating the plan and how successful it was. Now, the Berlin Airlift. This is the major event that happens early in the Cold War. West Germany was a major recipient of the Marshall Plan. We built up a lot of buildings in West Berlin that had been devastated, but we also built up the cities of Munich, Freiburg, Frankfurt, Hamburg. All these cities were heavily bombed during the war, and we're going to build them up. All right. Now, West Berlin, though. Now, West Berlin Berlin was the capital of Germany. West Berlin is right in has its western zones, the British, the U.S., and the French zones, as we showed in the last section. It's right in the middle of East Germany. It's like an island in the middle of this large Soviet land. All right, so that's a problem. The West Berlin, even though it's democracy, it's part of West Germany, though it's not the capital. They realized they couldn't have the capital be isolated like that. So West Germany picked the small little city of Bonn. It's on the Rhine River. It's not very big. In fact, they used to refer to it as the capital town of West Germany. East Germany will use East Berlin as its capital, but West Germany can't because it's surrounded right in the middle of East Germany. So there's a problem there. Stalin wants it to be part of them, but they say no. Now, a lot of people in East Berlin, East Germans, were escaping into West Berlin to escape communism, because communism, you have a lot of lines, there's shortages of everything, there's shortages of foods. The classic story was the shortages of toilet paper, which during this current situation, we can appreciate why they were so concerned about it. And of course, in West Berlin, you could get toilet paper. You can get Coca-Cola. You can get Pepsi. You could get things that Americans have, and you can't get those in East Berlin. So they were just like, everyone was just crossing the street into the West Berlin zone. There was nothing to stop them. You just cross the street from East Berlin into West Berlin. So Stalin wants control of West Berlin. He wants the whole city, and that's one thing we were not going to allow to happen. So what Stalin does is he closes all the roads and railroads into West Berlin through East Germany. So any way the trains would travel from West Germany all the way to West Berlin, or trucks that would travel from West Germany to West Berlin, all these highways and railroads have to go through East Berlin, which is under the control of the communists and Stalin. So Stalin shuts everything down. Basically, he shuts West Berlin off from the rest of the world. All right. Now that's going to be a problem because West Berlin depends on all these trains and trucks coming in with food and medicine, and especially coal. Stalin cuts off all the electricity to West Berlin. So there's no way for them to really make electricity. So they need a lot of coal, and eventually it's going to be winter and it's going to get cold. So that's the only way they can heat. They don't have gas heat like we have today in our homes. They have to depend on coal. All right. And so this is his way. Basically, Stalin's plan is to starve the West Berliners into surrendering. Now, we have a little delay here. My computer seems to be, here we go. So no food, no fuel. As I said, the plan was to starve them into giving in. And the trouble was West Berlin had about 2.5 million people. All right, so it wasn't small. That's a lot of people they'd have to take care of. And it was pretty much impossible with them closing down the trains and the highways. So this is going to lead to what is called the Berlin Airlift. All right, you can't close down the skies. So Truman needs to do something. He doesn't want to risk a war by using the military to force the routes open. He could have sent tanks in and fight the Soviets, on the highways and the railways leading into toward West Berlin, but that could start another war, a World War III. So Truman doesn't want to risk a war. But he also doesn't want to give up West Berlin to the Soviets. He's adamant about that. He does not want that to happen. So the Americans and the British start an airlift of food and fuel to West Berlin. And here we see in the map, you can see right there, East Germany is in red. Right, it has the Soviet flag there. And you can see Berlin. It's got the West Berlin's in black, East Berlin's in red. And you can see the other zones, the green, that's the British zone, yellow, that's the American zone, and we see the French flag, the two blue areas, that's the blue zone, the French zone. So they're going to fly planes in from West Germany over the skies of East Germany and land in West Berlin. You see where the plan is, you can see on the map. All right, this is not going to be easy. It's not like we're flying a few things in here to help them out for a weekend. We have to make sure we bring in enough food, fuel, supplies, medicine to keep 2.5 million people alive. So in July of 1948, and for the next 15 months, so that's 1 year and 3 months, the Allies will fly in supplies to Berlin. Now the code name, which I always thought was very good, was Operation Vittles, Vittles being kind of a nickname for food. The Soviets considered it a joke. It's impossible. You can't, using planes, you can't bring in enough coal or food and medical supplies for 2.5 million people. All right, you just can't do it. Now the Allies will make 200,000 flights. They'll land, and this is an amazing, 13,000 tons every day in Berlin. Here we see a picture. There was a picture that went by there. Here we see pictures of planes flying in over bombed out buildings. The West Berliners would come out and wave to them. And here they are landing in what was then Tempelhof Airport. It's since been torn down. But the planes would come in. You could see the trucks would pull right up. These were American cargo planes that were used during the war. And they would just unload them and get as much supplies. The German children used to come to the airport and watch the supplies coming off. And it was very exciting for them. But they kept doing it around the clock for 15 months. Now, one pilot, this is a very kind of a funny story here, which I really like. One pilot starts dropping candy to the German children, all right? As he's flying in, the children are all waving because they wave to the planes, you know, hey. As he's flying in, he drops candy out, all right? So the candy out to the kids. He makes up little parachutes and the candy floats down. He's really like it. Here we see is the plane would come in, he would pull the window back and he would throw the candy out the window to the kids. So you and the kids here are waiting for him. And this became very big for the the children of Berlin, who suffered terribly through the bombings of the war. These were all children. They were all like, very small kids when Hitler was in power. So, it was not their fault to what happened. So for them, they had all the American pilots just wanted to do something for the children. This was a little painting showing the pilots throwing the candy out with little balloons. The pilot who started it was I just lost his name. Here he is. He's still alive today, believe it or not, and he flies the. I can't go back there. No, can't get his name. He made up little parachutes, and and he would just throw the candy out, and it became known as the little candy bomber. So the American pilot who did in World War II, there he is. He's still around. It was a pretty cool story. The Berlin airlift is a total success, all right? On Easter Sunday, they called it the Easter Parade because planes landed every 30 seconds. At the height of the airlift, at that Easter Sunday, planes reached West Berlin. Every 30 seconds, a plane was landing, all right? Now, it was dangerous because you're flying one plane behind another through good weather, through bad weather, storms, rain, so it was dangerous. And during this time, 25 planes did crash, 39 British, because the British did join us after we started. The Navy joined too. The American Air Force was the first, but it was joined by the British Air Force, and the American Navy. So in the end, 39 British airmen and 31 American airmen lost their lives. We have a picture here of one of the American planes which crashed into some German buildings outside the airport. Now, the Germans erected a memorial, and I've seen this, it's outside one of the airports, Frankfurt Airport. When I was over in Frankfurt, I was driving on the highway, and you could see this. It shows, it's symbolic of the 3 routes that were flown into West Berlin from Germany. And if you look at the base, this is the very bottom of that monument there. They've actually put the names of all the pilots, the British and American pilots who died bringing the food in. So it's a memorial to the pilots who died, but it also commemorates the Berlin airlift. All right, I want to talk about NATO. This is one of the things that comes out of the early parts of the Berlin airlift. The Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine ended any thought of the U.S. returning to any pre-war isolationism. I talked about this before. The U.S. would now be the leader of the free world, and we still are today. Now, the United Nations was created to protect its members, but it was constantly blocked by the Soviet vetoes. Remember, right, that Soviets were members of the Permanent Security Council, and any one member could veto the actions of the United Nations. And every time the United Nations wanted to go in there and help out some country, if the Soviets didn't want to do it, they would veto the action. So the United Nations didn't have as much power to stop communism aggression. So the Allies want a separate organization for mutual protection. So in 1949, 12 nations joined to form what is called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. It's still around today. It's basically a military alliance. It was originally started by the United States, Canada, Great Britain, and France. It was later joined by Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Italy, and Portugal. All right, now Portugal was actually a neutral country during World War II, but they joined NATO. In 1952, Greece and Turkey, which were 2 countries that Stalin wanted to take control of, they joined NATO. And in 1955, West Germany joins, and they never really wanted to be part of it because Francisco Franco never wanted to be part of NATO. But finally, in 1982, Spain joins. Today, there are 28 members, all right, including, ironically, 10 former communist countries like Poland. Back in 2009, 11 years ago, Albania and Croatia joined NATO. Now, one of the tenets, one of the important doctrines of NATO is they all agree that an attack on one is an attack on all. So if the communists attack any one individual country, all the countries will come together to protect them. The idea is all these countries there will keep the Soviet Union from trying to go after any one individual country. Now, the Soviet Union was against Germany being allowed to have a military. All right. After the war, they said no, but they do. The United States does allow it. They threatened to make their own alliance if Germany was rearmed and joined NATO. And since West Germany does join NATO in 1955, the Soviet Union and its satellite countries create their own organization. Excuse me. They create their own organization known as the Warsaw Pact. It's a military alliance of the Soviet bloc countries. Here we see one of the, this is the symbol of the Soviet Pact. It's got the flags of all the Eastern Bloc countries, one of their tanks. We see there's Romania, Hungary, there's East Germany. Right in the middle we have Poland. Then we have, no, that's Romania. What are those? Hungary. Yeah, we have Bulgaria, Hungary, East Germany, Poland, one from left to right, Romania, the Soviet Union, and last on the right is Czechoslovakia. So these were the potential opponents in NATO. So from 1955, I remember this right through college, the big thing was NATO versus the Warsaw Pact. These were the 2 military alliances of the Cold War. The West has NATO, still around today. The East has the Warsaw Pact. It broke up in 1991 with the fall of communism. So the Warsaw Pact doesn't exist anymore. All right. Yeah, it disbanded, as I said here, in 1991 after the fall of communism. Now, let's see. All right. Now, two events. These are the last things we're going to cover. Two events heightened tensions of the Cold War. All right. And they both occur in 1949. This is a big year for the Cold War because we're going to see the threat of communism to the America and to the NATO powers grow. Now, one, the Soviet Union tests an atomic bomb. This will be known as the bomb. It's discussed in literature and movies and in TV news and who has the bomb. And when they say the bomb is a generic term and it means the atomic bomb. Afterwards, it'll eventually refer to as the nuclear bomb. But right now, we just have the A bomb. All right. And only the United States had it. And we dropped two of them on Japan, devastating the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it was something that was very powerful, but only the United States had it. So this was the one thing that we kept that we had over the Soviet Union. So when they tested their own atomic bomb, as you can imagine, it really upset a lot of people in this country. All right. There was a fear among Americans that U.S. cities like New York or Philadelphia or Los Angeles or Chicago could be destroyed by Soviet atomic bombs. Now, the test really surprised the Western powers. The American intelligence had estimated that the Soviets would not produce an atomic bomb until at least 1953. So they were 4 years earlier. That was going to come up later, how they got such an advantage. We're going to find out they had some spies over here getting information from our scientists. So from here, both countries rushed to produce the first hydrogen bomb. The hydrogen bomb is much more powerful than the atomic bomb. The second part was China becomes communist. Now, there had been a long civil war in China. It started before World War II. The Chinese nationalists were fighting against the communist government. They'd been fighting ever since they overthrew the last Chinese emperor of China, I should say. So they've been fighting, but after Japan invades them back in 1937, they call a timeout to their civil war. And both sides, in their respective areas, fight against the Japanese. All right, 1945 comes, Japan is defeated, and the nationalists and the communists pick up their civil war where they left off. The nationalists ask us for help in the civil war. We don't, but it's not really possible. We don't have the power. We just fought a major war. The soldiers are coming home. It's very unlikely we're going to be able to send soldiers to China to fight on the side of the nationalists against the communists. Now, the communist forces were led by Mao Zedong, known as Chairman Mao, and eventually, ultimately, they do win. They are referred to then and today, as the People's Republic of China, or the PRC. The capital is Beijing, though when I was growing up, they used to call it Peking. Today, we, of course, refer to the capital of China as Beijing. The nationalist forces, which were led by Chiang Kai-shek, retreat to the island of Formosa, and it will become the Republic of China, or Taiwan, or the ROC, Republic of China, and the capital there is Taipei. We see a map here coming up. You can see China, the People's Republic of China, the Communist China is in red, and you can see how huge it is. And just off the coast, that little blue island there, that's Formosa. Today, that is the country of Taiwan. It's the largest country in the world that's not in the United Nations. China actually considers it part of their country, though they kind of let them do what they want to do. And people in Taiwan think that they are an independent nation, but they're not recognized by any country. The United States has a very good relationship with them, but we can't recognize them as an independent nation because the Chinese, Communist Chinese said if they did, they would invade the country and destroy it. So we have to kind of back off there for the sake of the people of Taiwan. There they are. Now, the USSR supported Chiang's forces originally. Stalin, now this is funny, you might say, wait, how did the communist forces support the nationalist Chiang Kai-shek and not the communist forces of Chairman Mao? It's because Stalin and Mao saw themselves as rivals. At least Stalin, who was very paranoid, saw Chairman Mao as a rival, as the top communist leader in the world. Before China would win, everyone saw the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin, as being the top communist leader in the world. But now here comes Chairman Mao. China is a huge country with a population that eventually, after the breakup of the Soviet Union, is actually going to be bigger than the Soviet Union. So Stalin is a little concerned about this. So he actually helps the nationalist forces defeat the communist forces in China. One of the little ironies there. Now, the communists win because they basically make fewer military mistakes than Chiang Kai-shek does. And there was a lot of internal fighting within Chiang Kai-shek's forces, and there was a lot of corruption. And the communists had one goal, and that was just to defeat them. So ultimately, they do win. Now, in 1971, this becomes a problem. The United Nations. Now, after World War II ends, nationalist China is a member of the Security Council. But now the communist powers take over. But the United States doesn't recognize them. They still look at nationalist China, which is now in Taiwan, as being the member of the United Nations, not communist China. And this really angered China. And then later on, after Stalin's dead and that whole conflict between Stalin and Mao is over, it really makes the Soviet Union angry because they felt this is a much larger country and they should be part of the United Nations. So in 1971, the United Nations admitted the People's Republic of China and threw out Taiwan, the Republic of China. They were one of the founding members and one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So in 1971, Communist China joins the United Nations. The People's Republic of China, the Republic of China, Taiwan is kicked out, and they're not a member today. All right? It is the most populous country in the world that's not a member of the United Nations. And unfortunately at the time, even though there was very little he could do about it, some people blamed Truman for the loss of China. And some people in America start not to trust the loyalties of those in our government. They're feeling that there are people in our government who don't see China, communism, as being as big a threat as they saw it. So this is going to lead into the next part of the Cold War. That's the Cold War at home, which will lead to what we, McCarthyism and the problems we have in this country over communism. All right? All right. So that basically concludes everything. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.